Um, I'm going to try to look now at the second stanza, and all my markings have been deleted. Oh dear. But that's okay. It makes it a lot clearer. So I try to steal the tricky manager's signs. Is hit and run the pulling of the ear? And the fact that this, we see the speaker, he doesn't understand what's going on here necessarily. He doesn't understand the way these people are communicating, the way these people are connecting. He's trying to decipher it, and we're kind of trying to decipher it also as the reader. The gives pictures too much low inside, injustice, fraud. And look at these words. I mean, these are big words, right? Injustice and fraud. And we're talking about balls and strikes in a kind of a beer league softball game. And so, again, this should have you start asking yourselves again, softball and life. What's the relationship? Why is this matter so much? And then it kind of brings us back to in what way maybe are they running from their life? Is they're pushing kind of all their problems that they're having in real life, and they're pushing it on to this softball game. And it means so much, and we have to ask ourselves, why does it mean so much? And I think one of the ways we want to look at why it means so much is looking back at what it means if the wives. This is discussing traditional gender roles. If the wives' role is to support the men, what's the men's role? And the man's role traditionally is to be successful, is to work, bring home money, support the family. And as we get down here, and I don't want to skip too far, but the men are failing, right? I mean, if that is their role, there is not someone, the breadwinner is not winning enough bread. And so, another way to be masculine in this poem is to be strong or successful in this game. And so we see people in certain ways, the men are failing at their role. And so maybe this is a reason why they're taking it so seriously up here. Ancient problems. And then we can look at ancient problems as a lot of things. Maybe one thing, ancient problems, is maybe some problems that result at this such delineated roles. Is that what happens if someone fails their role? And there's a lot of people in the world that fail the role, their gender role, or whatever role that they have. Not everyone can be successful. Not everyone can be financially successful or professionally successful. And if that is what you're told that you're supposed to do, well, it's going to have an impact on the way you think of yourself and what you're doing for your family. Bad hop on routine grounder. And then start thinking about, okay, this is what this means. This is a softball kind of routine grounders. For those of you who don't play baseball or softball, this, is something that should be caught, but something bad happens and it's a bad hop. And so the person can't catch the grounder or the ground ball, if you will. And then ask yourself, what's the parallel? Yeah. What's the parallel to life? All right. So, you think you're going to pay your rent, or you think you're going to pay your electrical bill, or you think you're going to get to work and your car breaks down, or you think you're going to pay a bill and something your washing machine breaks or something like that. This is something that you don't foresee. You think something's going to happen. You think it's going to be easy, and it does not happen, and something bad happens that doesn't allow you to successfully complete the play. All right. So you can start as they start connecting, as the poem starts connecting life and softball, now when we're talking about softball, we can think, what would be the parallel for life? All right. Close play missed by the team you want to win. Players from the first game high on beer ride players in the field. Their laughter falls short of the wall. So they're joking. They're making fun of the players, but look, it doesn't reach them when, it doesn't reach the players. They're sort of impervious, right? They're impervious to the criticism while they're playing. Under lights, the moths are momentary stars, and wives, the beautiful wives, in the stands now take the interest they once feigned. Oh, long ago, their marriage just begun, years of helping husbands feel important just begun. Let's start with this. Under lights, the moths are momentary stars. This is, I think we can read this as figurative language. So, literally, when lights hit moths, they look brighter and prettier. Moths, I think, are supposed to be seen here as ordinary, right? And I'm going to say, think about them as the men, right? That normally these are ordinary men. These are regular blue-collar type of people. But they're momentary stars when they're playing softball. All right? But then you ask yourself, what are the lights? I would say that the lights are the women. This softball game doesn't mean much, period, right? But it is perhaps less meaningful if the women are not there. The women create the atmosphere. The women make this an event. The women give the men, they are attending to the men. They're attending the game. They're creating this into something more important than it actually is. And I think in that way, the women serve as the lights that then cast their light upon these men and make the men more important than they actually are. The wives, the beautiful wives in the stands now take the interest they once feigned. So feigned is faked, right? So now they care. They earlier didn't. You got to ask yourself, why? What changed? And I think that's something that's important to this poem and something you should think about. I'm kind of pulled on how much I should, feed you certain answers, but helping husbands feel important. Again, these are husbands, if we're going to look at traditional gender roles, these are husbands that are supposed to be breadwinners, they're supposed to be successful, and they're just not, right? And so the women here, their role is to support the man in again, I can't emphasize this enough. This isn't necessarily what I'm advocating. I think this is what is being critiqued in the poem. And I think at first, maybe the women were being supportive, but they were going through the motions. But maybe as they age, they see that their success too is linked to the husband's success or lack of success. So if somehow they can push their husbands into feeling better about themselves, into being more successful in certain ways, even if it's softball, if it's anything, that because of the way their relationship is, in propping up the men, they themselves are also being propped up. And maybe this is something that is kind of dawning on them as they get older and they're more part of this relationship and they see the potential or the lack of potential in their husband and in their lives overall. I mean, this is, again, we talked about this in the first video. This is a poem about defeat. This is not an uplifting poem. There are kind of certain uplifting aspects of it, but overall, it's kind of I don't know, a downer. It's sober. It's a sober look at kind of middle class, blue collar, heterosexual marriages. I would say, I think a lot of students look at this and say, wow, these women are getting their look, Richard Hugo made them look so bad in this poem. And I think you can say that for sure. I mean, again, like the first video we talked about, basic used, screeching renders home. I mean, these are not, they're not attending to their children. I think this is all is true, but look at the end, and this is where the kind of language matters too. Look at the possessive. The women are owning the men here, right? The wives are with their men. It's not the men have their wives, right? And that's something that people analyze, feminists analyze, the possession, like, oh, this is my wife. It's an indicator of possession. But in this last line, the women are possessing the men. And I would argue the women are the ones, although they don't look great, because again, this poem is not necessarily uplifting, but the women are being successful in their role. They're at the softball game. They're cheering on their husband. They're supporting their husband. They're fulfilling their role if we look at traditional gender roles. Now, the negative is softball is a game designed for women. I mean, traditionally, right? And they're not playing. They're watching. They're not able to try to be successful. I mean, there are negatives to this role. But in the confines of this role, they are being successful. The men, on the other hand, are completely dependent on the women to be successful. They need the women in the stands supporting them, or else they just look like even more idiots than they are. They're the ones that are responsible for the scrimping, the anger, the degrading jobs, right? So even though I think on the cover, it seems like the men are out here having a great time and the women are doing nothing and being bad mothers, I think this poem is more critical towards the men and kind of where their lives have led them, and their lack of success, and their lack of worth. The only worth they have is worth that's fed to them by their wives. Think about it. Just think about all these concepts. I want you to interpret it the way you want to. It needs to be rooted in the poem. And you should take at least into consideration some of the things I've said here in these two videos. Again, there's two videos. This is the second one.